think real maturity is saying, hey, I forgive you, I love you, and I want to spend time with you. And for them, that's probably one of the most important things that they can experience as well. It's not just your diet and training, it's about lessons, life, and a more dynamic conversation. And so I'm looking forward to it.
How do you feel about things like fake it till you make it?
Do whatever you need to do in that sense within your mind to actually get out of that. And if that means you need to walk around like you feel like you're the shit.
You need to touch 100 kilos in the bar for your bench press to know what 100 kilos in the bar feels like.
Yep.
You can't, like 80 is not going to cut it. 90 is not going to cut it.
Yeah. Number 3, spend more time with your parents.
You don't think like that as a younger man.
Jordan Peterson said something really good. It's kind of like after a certain age, if you live away from your parents, there's only a certain amount of times that you're actually going to see them.
Make social media social. Well, we're sitting here today, aren't we?
The number one thing is environment. If you can get into the right environment, and this is one of the reasons why I like Dubai, is you're around people that, especially for me, that are ambitious, that are pushing themselves, that have very much a growth mindset.
Being a nice guy is not all it's cracked up to be. Okay, talk to me. You're a man that's worked on what he's wanted from dating and from relationships.
Yep.
What does that mean to you, that sentence?
So I think as a man, you always need to be...
Oliver, we're back, and this time we get to do it in Dubai.
Man, crazy. I remember the first time I came on, but now we're in a completely different place, so it's cool, man.
Yeah, and I think there's loads to reflect on, and I think when we were getting organised for this, we can, of course, do the different stories and developments that we've had over time, but I thought, let's just go value-packed and distill down some of the lessons that we've had from the different experiences we've had, both before we recorded the last time and since we recorded the last time as well, and I think that's going to be the most enjoyable chat for both ourselves and the guys listening.
Yeah, 100%. While I'm a fitness guy kind of by trade, I think like what I enjoy speaking about is a breadth of things, right? So it's not just your diet and training, it's about lessons, life, and a more dynamic conversation. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I was chatting with Subi this morning, and I know he's been a big inspiration for like how well you've done on Twitter, for example, or X as it's now known. And one of his most popular posts is like listing off the lessons when I think he turned 36.
Yep.
And he's actually writing a book off the back of that.
Yeah.
And I know you and I both love that style of post.
Yeah,
and it's a really good opportunity for us to like pull together these things that we've thought about. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's get into those today, man. And I'll let you kick off.
Yeah, let's do it, man. So the first one for me is self-awareness is the number one skill you need to develop.
I think if you told you and I that when we were in our uni days, 2021, we would have just completely washed by that and just gone over our heads. I think that has come with a relative amount of maturity over the years.
Absolutely. And I think that this applies to every facet, right? So you look at it from a fitness point of view, the reason you're not in shape, the reason you're overweight is because you're not self-aware about, your habits and the things that you're doing there, right? The reason why people are broke and they don't have money is they're not self-aware to their financial situation and what they have going on. And the reason why, your girlfriend has broke up with you, or maybe you keep getting cheated on and you're not in a relationship you want, is because you're not self-aware to what's been going on. So, this is like the number one skill that I think you can look at for general like self-development is, can I look at myself introspectively and see where my flaws are, see where the holes are, and then what do I need to cover those up and maybe improve on and not being so blind to? I think like that's really the key.
It's really easy to coast and go through life with these like levels of like comfort and ignoring the problems. As you say, like we'll quite quickly notice there's probably a pattern in our behaviors if we're willing to zoom out, and it's like a wanky corporate term would be helicopter view. Like you would look down and be like, oh, what's that guy doing? How he's behaving? That's probably where his values lie and how his results are going to look like. Mm-hmm. But we're often afraid to do that because sometimes if you pull away and you look, you're not going to like what you see.
Yeah. 100%. You're completely true. And when I look at the mistakes that I've made in the past, and especially the repeated ones, it's come from lack of self-awareness and lack of like addressing what is actually there and causing the problem.
What do you think stands out there?
I think in relationships for a long time, I was repeating the same mistakes. So maybe behaving in the wrong way, dating the wrong girls, following the wrong kind of blueprints of what I thought a healthy relationship should look like. And what I just found was that if I kind of actually was honest with myself and self-aware to that kind of stuff and kind of rip that band-aid off, that I could see all the problems that were coming. So yeah.
That's good, isn't it? It's a really good example. And I'll look at the situation you're in now, and it makes total sense that you have to take a moment to come away from those learned behaviors and patterns to redefine what it should look like and what it might look like.
Yeah.
I know that any time that I've zoomed out and had a look and I've not been comfortable with what I've seen, there's been that initial period of pain But
Yeah.
you've got to go through that in order to get to the other side, because it doesn't happen immediately. And I know that you maybe see an uncomfortable truth,
Yeah.
and many people want to hide from that.
Yeah, you're completely true. And it's honest what you say about the fact that sometimes you see it the first time, but you don't actually make the behavior change, right? So you see the mistake the first time, you're like, oh, no, it's fine. And then you make that mistake again, you're like, okay. And the third time it happens, you're like, bro, like, just listen to yourself, man. Like, you keep making this mistake, like, now's the time to change. So what I try and do now is just like, try and not make the same mistake twice. I think that's a really good motto to live by, is as soon as you see that happening, how can I then redirect and change? Yeah.
And the quicker you do that, the more you can move towards that direction faster as well.
Yep.
Because you have to stop in the tracks. And like you say, don't make the same mistake twice. If you stop at that point, then there's the opportunity to redirect. But if you're still going down that path and making that mistake maybe less often, but still happening, you're still going in the wrong direction. And I know that many listeners will be taking a shot at this point because I've mentioned Atomic Habits on the podcast, and it's a regular thing that I do.
Yeah.
But really, when you look at like good habits and bad habits, we quite quickly will reinforce our bad habits if it's something that we do regularly. And if you do it more than once, guess what? It's a learned behavior and it's going to continue.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And as humans, we're really good at rationalizing things, right? So we're like, oh, no, like, it's okay. Like, he thinks it's okay. And we can maybe get feedback from external sources to be like, that behavior is all right. Right. So I think like validation, right? And it reinforces that, and that echo chamber of kind of, opinions. So I think that's always also good to have people around you who are very self-aware and also that are very ruthless in that sense, because
maybe call you on your bullshit.
Exactly. So if you've got friends like that, they're going to be like, Cole, what you doing, man? Like, this is the second time. Or Cole, like, this is not like you. What's happening? Straight away you're like, shit. Like, that external feedback is good. Whereas a lot of times you can be in relationships and friendships with people that won't say anything, they let it slide, and I think that's bad.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because I've certainly noticed in different dynamics I've been involved in over the years, whether that's been friendships or relationships, if somebody doesn't call it early on and they let it build up and then it turns into an argument or a fight down the line, you're almost like confused as to why, because, oh, that's what I've always done. And I hosted, it's a while ago now, Dr. Taylor Burrows, maybe some episode somewhere in the 70s. I used to be able to remember all the numbers, but there's too many now. I do know that I think you were number 8 or 10 or something like that. You were super early on.
That's one of the first ones, yeah.
Yeah. But Dr. Taylor said some girls would be like, oh, I can't believe you're liking those girls' photos to like their partner or their husband. And often the guys would be like, oh, well, you weren't mad about that at the start. So how could that guy be aware that that was a problem? Now, don't get me wrong, there are certain foundations you should try and lay early on, but people aren't going to know that that's an issue unless you confront it. So there's almost like there's two parts to it. There's that our own self-awareness, but there's those that care about us around us flagging the behaviors that they see as problems. And I'd always rather people in my corner that weren't just yes men and like kind of fluffing me up and giving me everything I need to hear, instead maybe telling me the hard truths that I want to hear too.
Yeah, completely agree with you on that. For sure.
But yeah, let's go on to number 2, and this is one of mine, and that is action precedes competence. Without experience and exposure, you'll not become confident. I see a lot of people who ask me questions like, how do you become confident with public speaking? How do you get confident with sales? How do you get confident with going into a gym yourself and doing a routine that you've never done before? I'm sure you get that with some of your entrepreneurial clients. And you and I both know that you have to do the reps in some regard to validate that own self-belief in yourself.
100%. And it's kind of like, you get these 16-year-old life coaches and people like that come out and they want the benefits of the competence that they don't have and the action they haven't taken, right? And I look at myself even with sales. I remember my first sales call that I did. I was so nervous. I would always let people get back to me. I would not handle objections correctly. I'd be nervous when I came on. I've done hundreds and hundreds of sales calls now, probably verging on 1,000. And to me now, I wouldn't say I'm a guru, but I'm pretty good because I've done the reps. And that only comes from the fact that I took action on tons of calls, right? Doing 20, 30 calls a month for a good amount of years, right? That's the way that it goes. The same applies to your fitness and stuff. And what people don't understand is you iterate each time that you take an action. And the more that you iterate from the action, the quicker that you learn. So I think with action, of course, like you can get really, really good from, doing it a lot, but you only get great and competent if you actually take feedback and iterate, and you're again go back to that first point, self-aware, to then improve. So you can improve slowly, or you can take action and go like that if you iterate on what
that's
you've learned.
That's a great point, because people always talk about consistency, and consistency's like the entry level. That must happen, but consistent excellence or improvement is what really adds to things. And again, if somebody went and listened to the first episode that you and I did together, I've probably improved as a host. I would hope so.
Absolutely,
because there's
yeah.
been more reps. But I've also spent time reviewing game tape, identifying words that I could cut out or
Yeah.
words that I could add in or question styles that I should implement based on what I think other hosts do well or what I think would be befitting of my style and what the people who listen to this podcast would enjoy as well.
Yep.
And that is what really has moved the dial 240 odd episodes in, is that I've done the reps, but I've looked at how I could improve as well. And as you say, I've iterated on my craft, and that's where mastery comes from. And I love that you bring that up, because you could have somebody who just bangs away week to week on whatever their endeavor is, and it's just done with the same consistent, like, low level standard. And of course they don't see the same return.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I can see the difference in just the way that you operate now. And I think also it's about getting either coaching or understanding from people that have done really well to then do that iteration, right? Because for me, especially, like when I was trying to improve on sales, I could try and find out and figure out and go through this maze of what I should be doing. Or I could like look at someone that's like already like 5 years ahead of me at sales, and he could pick holes in what I'm doing and then help me iterate quicker. And I'm sure you've probably done that, right? Look at other great podcast hosts and the way that they maybe communicate and the way they do stuff. So then kind of take that feedback from when you're looking at your own game tape and being like, well, so I see that this guy doesn't say this word and he pauses here and he makes his point by this bit of body language, right? So you probably do something like that to learn. And I think that learning from other people helps you get further as well. So that's why I say to people, coaching is great in any aspect, because they're going to give you that little bit of feedback that you need to get to that next level.
Yeah, there's two things popping off my head. One of them is that we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I really believe that the access to information we have nowadays for free is absolutely incredible. Like, go into the archive of this podcast, go into the archive of your YouTube channel, and the resources you've got are absolutely mad. But also from a coaching perspective, I'm thinking about your improvement in like the world of copywriting. And Stand on the Shoulders of Giants was a style of episode I actually did with Chris Burns, Savage Scholar, who I know you got some help with.
Yeah.
And he's someone that's helped coaches to level up how they write to their email list, how they write on their socials, how they turn up and are presenting into the world. And he's like this master copywriter, and you just get access to him. And through different calls or strategies or whatever else you get access to in frameworks, you level up. And that's something that you look at what you've done in your sales, what you've done in your copywriting, what you've done across your business over the last few years. There's a lot of it that's been borrowed from people who were ahead of you in the game, and you were like, oh, interesting, they do that way.
Yeah.
How can I put Ro's spin on that, and how can I make it my version?
100%. Yeah. There's no, original way of doing things. There's just an original way that you deliver it, right? So the principles stay the same, but maybe I have a different sense of humor or a different like worldview or different values. So then I put that into the principles that are there. Those principles still stay the same. So that's the good thing about it, is you can personalize it a little bit, but also those principles are always like there. They're like forever.
Universal. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're unmovable as well. But yeah, on the other side of things, we're talking about people gaining confidence. There are people that have an element of delusion. How do you feel about things like fake it till you make it?
Yeah, so I watched an Andrew Tate video actually on this, where he said like you should have a big ego, right? And you should fulfill it. And to some point, I do agree on that, because I think especially when you're like down in the dumps and things are not going great for you, like you're the only person that's going to get you out, and you need to be very Machiavellian and do whatever you need to do in that sense within your mind to actually get out of that. And if that means you need to walk around like you feel like you're the shit, or go into an expensive hotel and sit there and drink water because you want to be around high level people and that motivates you, and you want this drive, do it. Like, you need to do whatever you need to do to be inspired. But at the same time, going back to like point number one is self-awareness, is don't get too ahead of yourself, because maybe you're not where you need to be in regards to actual reality. So keep working. So it's
I like
tough
that
balance,
balance,
right?
I think you're striking a balance there, like fake it till you make it / exposure therapy.
Yep.
So you're exposing yourself to the stimulus and understanding what it might feel like for all the fitness pros listening, like Oliver and I, you need to touch 100 kilos in the bar for your bench press to know what 100 kilos in the bar feels like.
Yep.
You can't, like 80 is not going to cut it, 90 is not going to cut it,
Yeah.
because it's an extra 10 kilos on top of that, and you need to know what that feels like on your chest to know whether you're going to be capable of it at some point down the line. And eventually you will be if you do the reps and you do the work. But you're faking it to make it. You just like get an understanding of it. Maybe the guy gives you a really heavy spot and takes quite a lot off you, but you get an understanding of what it might actually feel like. So I really like that balance between the two of fake it to make it / I'm just experiencing this to see what it's like, but not deluded.
Absolutely, man. You hit the nail on the head. And one of my favorite quotes on this is, your mind must arrive at your destination before your life does.
That's
which
deep,
is true, man. So you mentally, you need to be in the place that's already benching 200 or already has a successful business, already is there. Like, you already feel like that person. and then you go and do all the action and all the work that it takes to get there. I think a lot of people don't get to where they want to be because they have that limited self-belief that they think, I don't deserve to be there, or even in the future with the work, I don't deserve to be there because of the way I've grown up, or because of this, or I'm this race, or but whatever excuse you throw at yourself, right? But I think if you can remove those limiting beliefs in your head and then say, right, I'm going to this destination, it's the law of attraction. You're just going to get there. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, it's so important to have that vision, because if I think about the times when I've been the most successful, I've had a target to aim towards, and I've had a game plan on how to get towards it.
Yeah,
and I can see myself joining those dots, and I'm not holding myself back from doing the action in terms of, oh, that's not good, that's not something I'm capable of, that's for other people, that's for people that aren't like me.
Yep.
That's a really self-limiting belief, as you say. And I'm loving this conversation so far, and I can completely see how people can take something away from that approach to get towards competence, because you need to do the reps first.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Let's go for number 3 then, Ro.
Cool. So number 3, spend more time with your parents. As I've got older, I've seen my mum and dad get older, and this is the indicator to spend more time with them. Whatever your relationship with them, call them, tell them you love them, and take care of them. You'll appreciate it so much.
I think, again, that's something that in mid to late 20s and early 30s for me is something that is reinforced. You don't think like that as a younger man.
You don't. And the reason why is because your 20s is your selfish years, right? As a person, you're trying to build yourself up. You want a lot of things, and you like to have broken away from the fact that you're away from your parents, because in your late teens and as a kid, you've spent all that time with them, and you kind of have this chip on your shoulder, or at least I did, that I wanted to go and prove myself that I could go out and do this. And you're so focused on yourself. That's what it is. But as you start to get older, and I think the indicator is when you see maybe friends or older brothers, parents like start to get ill or pass away or freak accident, you kind of like, well, we're actually not here for that long. And Jordan Peterson said something really good. It's kind of like, after a certain age, if you live away from your parents, there's only a certain amount of times that you're actually going to see them. And a lot of bad things can happen with families and relationships. Like, I probably didn't have a perfect, relationship with my parents as I grew up, but I think real maturity is saying, hey, I forgive you, I love you, and I want to spend time with you. And for them, that's probably one of the most important things that they can experience as well.
Yeah, when they hear that, it can create water under the bridge, no matter what's gone before it. Obviously, I appreciate people have different circumstances.
Of course, I understand that as well. Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much that can be forgiven, because your own flesh and blood is not something that you choose, but something that you are fundamentally linked to for forever and ever. And I love that Jordan Petersonism, where you can calculate it. Like, I think he was like going into, like, if you go home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and your parents are 80, then statistically, whatever else, that is a real shot in the arm for a lot of people. And one of the things that I always add on to that sort of discussion, and I had this conversation with Sahil Bloom, who I'm sure you've maybe seen on Twitter. He was great on the podcast about a couple of years ago now. He was talking about moving back from whatever coast he was on to New York. And he was like, I just had to, because I worked out that I wouldn't be able to see them more often. And if it creates action, but the layer on top of that is the time that you do spend with them has to be quality time. Now, I'm very fortunate. I live very close to both my parents, both mum and dad, at their house. And I'm able to walk to it in about 10 minutes. That's incredible.
That's incredible.
But the time that I spend with them has to be present. It's really easy to go over to their house, and I watched the Six Nations with Dad last weekend, and be on my phone checking emails or socials or in the WhatsApp group chatting to the boys. Or I could put the phone away for that 80 minutes and just enjoy the rugby with them and really have that time, because that's what I'm going to remember more than, oh, such and such liked my photo, or somebody sent a really funny meme into the group chat. That's not going to be with me after my dad's gone. What's going to be with me is that I spent that time with him, and it was quality time, and I was really engaged, because it's really easy to spend the time but not really spend the time.
100%. And you always see those photos on online, right, where you see like the granddad with the kid and the kid's on the phone, right, and there's that caption like, like, you're wasting time, like he hasn't got long left. And as adults, we can relate to that as well.
The feels.
You can see it, because I sometimes do it. I've had a busy day and I'm late at night, I'm having dinner with my mum, and something pops up, a client gets angry, and I'm just on the phone and I'm not there with her. And it's kind of like, well, I can't be doing that all the time, otherwise I'm not going to spend much time with my mum.
It comes from self-awareness, as we've just said here, like identifying that that's something that's happening, and then figuring out how we can do it. And it's typically environment design, and that is when you go into the house, the phone goes on do not disturb, or it goes in airplane mode or something like that. It goes out the way, in the same way that we're having this conversation just now.
Yeah,
everything's away, we're totally in it. Imagine you had that time with like all the people you spent your time with. We'd all be so much happier, but we're all so distracted. It's unbelievable.
100%. I think a good way to kind of like bring this like full circle with this is, what I found as I've got older is, people and family are like the most important things. And we can live in a lovely place like Dubai, have a great standard of living, that kind of thing. But you'll still be miserable if you don't have the right people around you, or you're maybe not close with your family. So for me, like I've just actually put a deposit down on a 2-bedroom to rent, because I want an extra room for when my mum, sister, and if my dad come over, right? Because that's important to me and part of my kind of value system, right? And I'm willing to pay that little bit extra more because they could come over maybe, I don't know, an extra 2-3 times a year and stay for free and not have to worry. And I think that if you are away, or you're longer the distance from your parents, trying to find a way in which you can do that,
make it work
and make it easy and like less friction too. Because I'll tell you, like the best thing that I've ever spent money on, and I've bought lots of stuff, a lot of stupid shit, was taking my mum and sister on holiday to Egypt last year. It was one of the best things that I did, because that's a holiday and experience that will go down forever, man. Like the family is the most important thing that I can think of anyway. So that's why I kind of put that one down.
Yeah, number 3, I love it. And when we were getting prepared, I was like, that is one I really want to talk about, because you can come from all sorts of different backgrounds, and you and I are both fortunate to come from that 2-parent household, and it's something that I was speaking about with Zubi again this morning on the pod. I really, really think we're fortunate to come from that. But regardless of what situation you're in, we can shape it into something that's meaningful.
Yep.
And they aren't going to be there forever. So let's really make the most of it. And we both have very strong opinions on what happened during 2020 and 2021 in terms of the C19 period. But despite it not being nearly as deadly as we feared at the start, it did bring mortality into sharp focus, because it genuinely seemed like a threat that might remove many of our loved ones from us. So it made us a bit more conscious. And I think post-lockdown, a lot of people were, for a short period, a bit more grateful for the time they spent with people,
100%.
but we quickly snap back into day-to-day life again, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's the risk.
That is it, yeah.
And that's why these reminders, I think, are valuable, even if we put them in a short clip in a podcast. Well, let's push people to do it. Number 4 for me is ensure you speak to yourself respectfully and with compassion as you would a friend. That's a bit of a Jordan Petersonism. I think it might be rule 2 in his book, 12 Rules for Life. Because if I think about the type of people that listen to a self-development podcast on a weekly or a twice-a-week basis, we're probably sometimes quite critical of the efforts that we're making. And sometimes it feels like it's never enough, whether that's fiscally, whether that's productivity, whether that's our health and our fitness, whether that's the goals that we're striving towards, that we're not quite getting to where we want to.
Mm-hmm.
We can really belittle ourselves and give ourselves a really, really hard time. And if you think about how you would speak to a friend in that situation, you would probably not use the same sort of language that you do with yourself.
100%. When I saw this one, I really related to it, because for a long time I was very harsh to myself, right? When I haven't achieved what I've wanted to achieve, when I've made mistakes. Going back to that self-awareness, I would go into a cycle where I wouldn't be self-aware, realize I'd made a mistake, and then speak to myself very badly. And I think every high performer is going to be critical of themselves. I work with a lot of them, and these guys are always kind of grumpy, or they're always like stressed and got a problem because they've got to deal with stuff. And as a high performer, that's the way that you feel sometimes. And it's very easy to be getting into that negative cycle as well. When things are going badly, you speak down to yourself, you speak down to a situation. You're then in an Uber, you're angry, you're rude to the Uber. It could so easily spiral from just like speaking to yourself badly. So I actually, as hard as it is, just try and be kind to yourself is the easiest and cliche thing to say. But it's difficult as well, because we want the best from ourselves, and that means we have to be highly critical. It's a hard balance, and something I'm still trying to master.
I think we're always going to be mastering it, but just making sure that we don't err on that side of like self-abuse and self-harm, really, because that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can really, really tear yourself down. And one of the phrases that I talk about a lot on the pod is like zooming out. So Oliver from 2019, if he zoomed out and saw that he'd taken his business to Dubai, he was getting a 2-bed apartment so that his parents could come out and see him on a regular basis. He was having an impact within his coaching business. His Twitter growing really well. He was in the best relationship he's ever been in.
Yeah.
That's really positive.
Yeah, you're
but
right.
Day to day, there's probably something going to happen tomorrow, and you're going to be like, "Fuck, you idiot! How have you done this?" Or that's the risk, isn't it?
100%. That's zooming out. I was speaking about this with a friend recently, actually, as well. That the problems that you've got right now, like in the whole scheme of your life, is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. Even like, hopefully, it doesn't happen. A really, really terrible thing could happen. I guarantee, on a long time frame, it's nothing. When you think about it, like
it's not the be all and the end all.
It's not the be all and end all, and that's something really bad. Like the small things that we get stressed over, they're trivial, right?
Yeah. Oh, this launch didn't go as well. My Instagram got shadow banned, and my tweet didn't bang the way I wanted to. These things are like I hate the term microaggressions because it's that kind of woke term into it, but they're like micro annoyances.
They are, yeah.
Where we're like, oh, that's grating on me, but it shouldn't grate on you so much that it puts you off the bigger picture.
100%. Yeah. And it's easy to get into your shell. And again, it's going back to being very selfish in the way that we think that we're the only important thing and this is the only problem that we have and that we're never going to get over it and that everybody cares what they think if we fail. Whereas people are not focusing that much. You could be the talk of the town today. They're going to forget about you tomorrow. It's not that deep, bro.
The cycle moves fast, doesn't it?
The cycle moves fast. It's not that deep, bro. Carry on with life. Keep doing the right things. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. My biggest worry is that there's a small percentage of people listening who are too compassionate with themselves. I think that's more rare.
Yeah.
The kind of people that are in that personal development growth space.
Sure.
But if you give yourself a pass on every occasion, then you've crossed the boundary
of course
into that.
Yeah.
Because the reason that like a lot of the entrepreneurs you work with that have like created these incredible businesses and maybe their health's fallen off along the way and they're trying to get that back on track with you, they are critical of themselves in the areas that really matter and hold themselves to a high standard. They don't give themselves a free pass they're a little, well, maybe they've given themselves a free pass in their health, like I'm too tired to do that, but they haven't slacked on business.
Sure.
And that's why they're in that position. But it's just interesting to like apply that across their lifestyle in the right ways.
100%. I think this actually transitions into the next one quite well because your body open doors, your social skills keep you there, right? The reason why I think this is good is because, like you said about, entrepreneurs being highly critical of, themselves. This like point, like it's so true. I've met a lot of very big entrepreneurs that are very business successful, and they don't care if their body's not healthy. It's really crazy. They care so much about their body. As much as they might not say it and they make all this money, their body actually matters. And the reason being is if you are a guy in shape and you walk into a party or you walk onto a yacht, everybody wants to talk to you. It doesn't matter, like, really, like how much money you have. Like if you're in good shape, it's a conversation starter and you're already ranked high in the level of social status, right? And I think especially as a young guy, if you say, how do you want to get ahead? Well, your body will open doors for you. People are going to want to speak to you. And if you're got good social skills and you can be personable, like that's going to keep you there and get you to that next level. So yeah,
I agree with that so much. And I think we're in a bit of an echo chamber where a lot of the successful guys that we see online, because of the nature of the algorithm pushing guys that are in shape, we see a lot of entrepreneurs who have got that. And we almost think like, oh, to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be in shape. But there's this whole community of guys that have lost that side of things. And it's people like yourself that's kind of directing them back that way. And you've almost unearthed this little market and been like, guys, like there's a way to apply these brilliant behaviors you've got in your business to your health and fitness endeavors. And guess what? You're going to get the same brilliant results because your personality type's like pretty aggressive and pretty focused. Let's just apply it in the right domains.
100%. And I've got a story. So I work with a client who's very successful, runs a very big business, 8-9 figures, and he was speaking at a conference over in the US, and he texted me after the conference to say, Oliver, my speech was 5 times better than everybody else's, but I looked at least twice as bad as everybody else when I was on stage. He's like, I need to fix this. He knew that he was better intellectually, presenting wise, but he still had that level of shit, I don't look good or feel confident up there. Like he 5 times better the way that he spoke, but still the way he looked and felt about his body, himself, shame, guilt was still there. Even after all the money, all the millions, after the success and being applauded off the stage, the insecurity is still there of not feeling physically confident.
It matters. It does. People can say it's superficial, but as you said, if you go to the party, you go on the yacht, whatever it is, somebody will ask you like, oh, how do you get in shape? And it's the ultimate status symbol.
Yeah.
Because you can buy it through coaching and then the hard work that comes off the back of it, but it doesn't just happen overnight. So everyone knows you have to be in the arena and do some work to get to that point.
Yep, absolutely.
And I really, really think that you were saying about young guys, let's get the body in shape.
Yeah.
Because you give yourself the best opportunity. I always feel it's like a gateway drug to self-development.
100%.
Like you and I were not as actualized as as we do now when we first started lifting weights.
100%.
But lifting weights and seeing improvement in that domain kind of opens you up into some of the other elements.
100%. Like the easiest way to improve yourself is by getting your body in shape, especially as a young person that's not got much money but has got a lot of time. Because when you start taking your body seriously, you're kind of like, well, I'm going to start dressing better. And when you start dressing better, you're like, well, I feel good now. I'm going to start maybe looking at trying to get a promotion in my job. The confidence starts to come through. And then you go out to a bar and you're kind of like, well, I'm doing well financially. I've got a good body. Like, I'm going to go and talk up to this really hot girl that I used to be able to not be able to speak to. And your life just starts to improve.
Yeah. And the people skills comes with that because, as I said, there's maybe somebody screaming in their AirPods that this sounds superficial, but it does give you an element of confidence that you feel like, as that guy, the opposite of what he felt like. When I stand up at conferences or I stand up in whatever domain I'm speaking in, I feel confident that I look presentable, I feel tidy, I look like I look after myself, which is a really attractive trait in anyone.
Yep.
Like, people are drawn to people who care for themselves.
Yep.
And like those habits, they show through in how you look. Like, you can't kid a kidder.
Yeah.
You can't fake this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really, really relate to that. I do think it's like the pebble at the top of the avalanche. Like, let's nail the habits around our health and our nutrition and our fitness. And guess what? We're probably going to feel that little bit more articulate, a little bit more fluid, that little bit more willing to put ourselves out there.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next one. Make social media social. Most of my closest friends have been made online. They are more like-minded. Well, we're sitting here today, aren't we?
Exactly. And I remember we actually first met through the clothing brand by Ant, right? I forgot the name. Was it Absolute?
Absolute. Ant Meller.
Ant Meller, yeah. And we were both in the same photo shoot. We followed each other on Instagram, and then we did a couple of shoots. I believe we did a couple of shoots together, or we knew each other through some of the clothing we had, and now we're here.
Yeah. And I really think if I look at that 2017, 2018 period where I was doing predominantly fitness content on Instagram, I've got so many friends from that period who were just posting cool stuff that was like in that space where it was like, yeah, we left. Yeah, we live like a lifestyle alongside it. We want to build businesses. We want to build careers. We want to move in the right direction. And by putting myself out there, I had friends in every city, or friends, I say like people who really got me in every city that were much more like me than the people I went to school with, people I went to university with, because I couldn't choose them in the same way that you've got choice on social media.
100%. And that's the thing. It's geographical location where you meet your friends. So if you sit next to someone in school, of course you're going to be friends with them because they're down the road. Your parents probably know their parents. You might have played football together. And don't get me wrong, I've got friends like that, my day one friends, and I'll be friends with them for life just because we've been on such a journey together and we've learned so much stuff. But that doesn't always mean you're going to see eye to eye on everything with people that you've grown up with and maybe have the same values or even ambitions. Whereas you go online, you've got the full world that's there, and you're just going to see a synergy that I think is the best thing. Like having this conversation right now, it's a synergy that you're going to see. And I think for people that are especially trying to get out of their situation that's quite difficult and tough where they are, one of the best things you can do is go online and make friends, because that's what's going to help you get out of that place. And the number one thing is environment. If you can get into the right environment, and this is one of the reasons why I like Dubai, is you're around people that, especially for me, that are ambitious, that are pushing themselves, that have very much a growth mindset, that hopefully self-aware to what they're doing and looking to achieve hopefully big things. And you might not find that if you're in your small town in somewhere in the UK or somewhere else. It might not be the case.
Yeah, because you're then limited by what's immediately visible and what's in sight, whereas social media, like you say, opens you up, and you really can filter by interest group. Because while we were in that kind of fitness space, I bet there was one for golf. I bet there was one for tennis. I bet there was one for knitting. I bet there was one for Warhammer. I bet there's like a community for that you could have been like, oh, we both like that. Yep. I wonder if we'll get on beyond just that as well. Because what I will say is that I met many people through the fitness space during that time period, and many of them continue to be friends and some really close friends. But there's plenty of people I met as well that the only thing that we had in common was the way we liked lifting. Yeah. Whereas you and I speak about crypto, we speak about dating, we speak about mindset, we speak about business, we speak about lots of other things that enable us to be friends beyond that. But you might have that common interest, and that might be the only thing, but that's okay. Yep. Nothing ventured, nothing gained in that regard.
100%. And that's another reason why I'm a big fan of traveling too as a young person, because you get exposure to different things and you get to see what you like, who you like, what you don't like, and the things that you really want to invest your time into. And as a young person, if you don't go to university, I think that's one of the best things you can do is go out and travel, because it gets you out of your comfort zone, gives you a lot of stresses that you've got to deal with. But I think importantly, it's going to help you become social with people and get to actually meet new people who you might align with too, which I think is good.
It's funny you mentioned university, because you're thrust into halls of residence, or you're thrust into a group of people that do the same course as you. And that is likely to be one of the only things that joins you together. Oh, we're studying politics, or we're studying sports science, or we're studying medicine, or we're studying dentistry.
Yep.
You're much more likely to develop a friendship if you end up connecting with people over something that you spend time doing outside of like your vacation.
Yeah, that's
so
correct.
I can't choose the people that I typically work in my corporate role with. And I have a handful of people that I've worked with over the years that I would consider friends. The rest of them are acquaintances and colleagues.
Yep.
Because I can't choose them. But if I can go and be like, oh, these guys are interested in self-development, these guys are interested in fitness, these guys are interested in golf, these guys are interested in the same football team as me, that's an ability to start to filter a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And the more of those boxes that are ticked, the more likely I am to end up like becoming close to that guy.
100%. Yeah, you make a great point on that.
Yeah, I really think that people should make social media social, because there's lots of negatives to it, but I've made it, from my perspective, a net positive based on the network that I've built. Because it used to be called, I think the film that they did on Facebook,
The Social Network,
was called
Yeah.
The Social Network.
Yeah.
We've really forgotten the networking part,
Yeah.
and instead we just consume and just scroll. I know you and I are creating on there, so there's an element of that, but there'll be many people listening to this that have no desire to create a podcast or post photos of themselves lots on the internet, and that's not a problem. But you could find people that are in your area of interest and reach out to them and connect. Like for me, it was like meeting up for gym sessions. It was meeting up for going to the golf range, going to whatever it was. I was like, oh, these people share something with me. Let's invite them to do that. And I think people are worried that sounds like weird.
Yeah, of course.
Like a fear of rejection.
There's that resistance as well, right? That you might meet someone and they could be a serial killer or a weirdo, right? And there's that kind of scary thing. So what I would say is obviously try and do a bit of due diligence and like make sure that they're not a psycho. But majority of the time, like 99% of the time, the people are decent.
Yeah,
and
meet
you're
in a
gonna get
public
on.
place.
Of course.
Give yourself the opportunity to be safe. I think it's easier for guys and girls though as well.
Of course, yeah, of course. Yeah, dating's a different story, but I think if you're just trying to make friends, you're probably going to be okay. Yeah.
You can take a different approach to it. Yeah, I would really encourage people to take action on that and push forward. But yeah, number 7 for you.
Cool. So number 7, we've touched on this a little bit, but lifting weights is a gateway drug to self-improvement. Nobody has ever regretted weight training. What it does to your body is good. However, what it does for your mental and emotional state is transformative. Lift 3 to 5 days per week if you want to become your best self.
We don't need to expand too much on that.
I don't think we need to talk about that.
It is
Yeah.
so true. But I honestly look at the behaviors that helped me to build the physique that I've got, and I completely see I've applied it to the podcast. I've applied it to my sales career.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, it's kind of like a rinse and repeat model.
Well, it is, because what it is it's giving you structure and routine. And when I look at the way I operate now in business and the way I operate in a lot of things, it's because I had that structure of, okay, you need to wake up, you need to have these food or these supplements in the morning. You then need to make sure you got all your gym stuff ready. You go to the gym, you do this, you come back. Because the gym, it's not just going to the gym and working out. It's the hundreds of other things that you do after. It's preparing the food, it's sleeping well, it's removing the bad habits and trying to progress and push, right? Progressive overload is a thing. And there's a great quote, it might be Chris Williamson that says it, which he says, looking to progressively overload throughout all aspects of life. And it's true, progressive overload is in the gym, but then you just apply that to a different...
The concept stands.
Exactly.
It really does. And I think it's so encouraging when you gain mastery in one area of your life. You're like, oh, why don't I apply it to somewhere else as well?
Yeah.
And I find it like a very empowering tool to be like, look, master my body, but guess what? I'm going to use the same structure, same routine, same habits to go into this, whether it's studying for a degree, whether it's getting a promotion in work. Let's just pour into it.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, number 8. And that is, your diet is not just the food you eat, it's the media you consume and the people you talk to.
I love this one. Yeah, and I think going back to what I spoke about earlier was environment, right? So I look at Dubai and I think, okay, the environment here for me is a good diet in some ways. It can be bad as well because there's a lot of distractions. But I think if you're around the right people and, you listen to the right podcasts, you're reading, looking and consuming the right stuff, like that is so important. It's even probably more important than your diet sometimes. It is the way that I look at it.
The thoughts in your head.
Yeah.
Like my diet and my ability to do my diet is largely linked to like how I'm feeling in terms of my cognitive function, in terms of my energy. And it goes both ways. Of course it does, it flows. But that's largely shaped by what I'm consuming within my screen time. How much is my screen time? Who am I talking to? Are they negative people? Are they positive people? And one of the questions I was asked in a recent solo Q&A was, what are the qualities of your circle? And one of my number one qualities is not know negative people, but know people that like piss on your parade when you've done something well or try and one up you.
Yep.
Like there's a phrase that we use at home, maybe it's other areas of the UK as well, but if you've been to Tenerife, they've been to 11 Reef, because somebody's always trying to get one up on you.
Yep.
So like when you got your watch, for example, I was like, mate, amazing news, congratulations.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody might get like the watch that they've always wanted and something like, oh yeah, well I just bought this one, and you're like, no mate, like let them have their moment.
Yep.
Praise them, be pleased for them, and like we're all gonna make it, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's like a nice energy to have. Whereas you do get people that are like trying to one up or push you down, and the people you surround yourselves with, you've got a choice. I know there's almost like a loneliness epidemic to some extent, and that's why I was really pushing that social media, making it social point.
Yeah.
But the people that you're surrounded by, give yourself that opportunity to like feed things forward. And nowadays it's really like cliched to say like filter your newsfeed. But yeah, I still see people who get like so triggered by what they see on their phone. Like, oh, did you see Sarah from school or whatever has just posted this? And you're like, why are you still following her? You're like in your late 20s and you're following a girl that you didn't like at school and just triggering yourself on a regular basis. And that's not just aimed at people that follow people from school, but like it's relevant across the board. Like you might be politically really annoyed by something you're seeing. Well, guess what? You can unfollow, you can opt out, you can mute keywords on X, for example, as well.
100%. And I think it goes back to that first point of self-awareness, because the modern environment is not conducive to optimal health, performance, and progression. When you look at it, we're surrounded by junk food that we eat. The stuff that we see on TV is terrible. Some of the stuff that you're even going to see in politics is going to be rubbish. Everywhere around you, things are attacking you to try and, you know, destroy your productivity, destroy your progression. And I think a big thing is be self-aware to that and know what is running you, essentially. Because if you know what's running you, you're going to see, okay, this is where I need to make the change and this is what I need to remove.
It's funny, in terms of remove, when was the last time you watched the news?
I think I was sat at my mate's, what is it called? Like a working area, like a residential lounge, and they had BBC News on. And I think it was a day that one of the Russian leaders had died or something. And I saw the news and I thought, I'm not really interested in this. But I just don't put it on at any of the time.
It was in a communal area where you didn't have control of the remote.
I didn't have control, and it was there was only one table, and I'd sat there to work because I needed to do some work, and the TV was right there, a huge screen, and I couldn't change it. So that was the last time I watched the news.
Yeah, but not by choice.
Not by choice.
It's not a habit.
It's not a habit.
And when I'm talking about somebody's consumption in their diet, it's the media you consume, and news is the number one. Is the number one media outlet. We're getting there with podcasting, but it really is what we choose. And so many people have it on in the background, or they have like the BBC News alerts on their phone. And I'm not just shaming the BBC here, although they are a bit of a joke organisation. You've got Sky News or whoever else as well. They're sending you updates about all these things. And something that stayed with me for a very long time now, probably since 2020, is if it bleeds, it leads. Mm-hmm. And that's how the news narrative is set. You don't hear the story about, Colin and Oliver got to know each other over social media, so they caught up in Dubai for a podcast. They went for a gym session, they had a great time. That's not newsworthy. No. What's newsworthy is that somebody meets up with somebody from social media and they get attacked. Yeah. That's what gets on the news. But that's the 1% or even less than 1%. So I really, really advocate unplugging, reassessing what goes on your phone, what goes on your screen. The people that listen to a podcast like this one have been selective to pick this.
Of course.
But be careful what else is sneaking in.
100%. I think there's that famous quote, isn't there, by Warren Buffett, that the world isn't run on greed, is run on envy or something like that, and like jealousy and negative emotions. And when you look at like some of the biggest marketing campaigns in the world that you see, or the biggest influencers, everything that they do is based on shame and making people feel bad, right? It's, you know, you look at Tate, he shames you for being a brokey, right? Wes Watson, he shouts at you like, oh, I was in prison, like, look at me now, right? Like, I'm great. Like, and you, like, from this great life, like, you've achieved nothing. Like, it's shame. You look at C19. Oh, you didn't take this, but that person's grandma's gonna pass away because you didn't take this. Shame, negativity, make yourself feel bad about you. So as people were constantly fearing like this judgment and this guilt, and
you don't want to be the outgroup.
You don't exactly.
Huge. Yeah. So I would really encourage people to reassess. Number 9 rule.
Okay, cool. So little bit of a controversial one, but I think I'm going to explain this. So nobody cares about how much of a nice person you are. The best way to do good is to do well first and lead with value. The more excellent you are, the more people you can affect and the more good you can do in the world.
Completely agree. And that's where, again, you and I are both children of Jordan Peterson in this regard. Being a nice guy is not all it's cracked up to be, because being nice can actually be weak, subservient, and not the right thing to do. And doing right is often more important than doing something that's deemed to be nice in the moment or like supportive. Like the righteous path is not always the easy one. The righteous path might involve some challenges. You might have to break a few eggs to make an omelette. And I really believe that if you are behaving as a good man and becoming valuable, then, and this is again, take a shot if you've heard me say this before, a rising tide raises all ships. So be a positive force and bring people along on the journey with you. And like, let's look at the example you talked about, getting a 2-bed flat in Dubai. Amazing. Because mom, dad, your sister, they come on holiday, they have a fantastic time. They don't need to worry about the expense of the accommodation.
Of course, yeah.
Because you put yourself in a position where you built a business that was able to do that and sustain it.
100%. And I think that people can get the wrong, perception when they read that kind of quote. Like, it doesn't matter how much of a nice person you are. It's kind of like misconstrued a little bit. It does matter.
On Twitter.
It's a hook, right? But it does matter. But the only way that you can maximize the good that you want to do is by doing really, really well. And like you said, it elevates people. And, you look at it from like famous philanthropists or famous, entrepreneurs. The only reason that they can do that is because they've got to a certain level to then actually do good. Are there people that misuse power? Absolutely. But I think what I'm trying to say here is if you come from a good place and you come from a place of wanting to do good, then it's your duty to go and do well too, because you need more people to see what you're doing. If you've got a good business that's maybe going to help some people get in shape, or I don't know, stop addiction or whatever it is, the better that you are at sales and marketing, the more people you're going to help. It's really simple.
I've got very traditional views that up until 10, 15 years ago, nobody would have batted an eyelid at, that as a man, it's my duty to be a success, to provide for my family that's behind me in terms of my mum and dad when they're old age, and for my family that comes next, which will be my wife and my children. And me doing that is not a nice thing to do. It's a dutiful thing to do, and it's a good thing to do because I feel it's my purpose and it makes me feel good. And guess what? It has a ripple effect and supports the people around me.
100%. And sometimes, I've changed a lot as I've run my business, and as a leader, being nice is actually counterintuitive sometimes. And, sometimes I'm tough on my team and I've got to tell them that this is wrong and they can't do this and they need higher standards, and the same with my clients, and to do that. But that's only because I want to see them do well. I don't want to be a people pleaser and be like, hey, look, like you can just go do this. I don't care if like we're like mediocre and we're failures. No, it's fine, man. I'm a nice guy. Like, I don't want to play it like that. I want us to all win. And sometimes that means me being harsh to
a hard conversation.
Next level.
So I would rather, I think we were saying at the start around like the people around us to help our self-awareness. I'd rather somebody called me on my bullshit. Like, oh, Colin, you said you were going to launch this sales coaching product because you've been doing some sales consultancy. Where's your video course you said you were going to build? Oh, I've not done it. Why? Because I've not made it a priority. Okay. Well, now I'm self-aware enough to go and address it because the people in my corner were good and not nice.
100%. And as well, you have to be careful with who you do that with too. And I found this too, in because a lot of people are different. And the way that I look at it is, if I had people come into my business, I'm upfront with them and to say, hey, these are like our values, and this is the way we do things. Like, we work with high performers. We're also a high performing company. So if you don't do this, I'm going to be on you. Like, are you in and you're out, right? It's kind of like that scare tactic at the start to like cut people that are not going to be down for that. But as soon as people are in, they're bought into that message and bought into that. And I think that's important, is having that up front with the right people so they know who that is. Because to some people, that's going to feel like that are maybe not into self-improvement or don't want to be spoken to like that. They're going to be like, man, this guy's a dick, like,
yeah, I'm out, and that's cool. We don't have to be friends with
everyone. Of course, yeah, exactly.
Number 10, the best way to learn is to teach. And I've really found that with the podcast. When I've learned a concept from an author or a guest, I repeat it to my audience, either on a future episode or in my email list or on an Instagram post or a LinkedIn post. And my ability to recall lessons is so much higher now than it ever would have been before, because of one, the repetition, but also I need to understand it well enough to re-explain it onto the next man. And that is a real sign that you understand something. When I can explain it to somebody else, something that I've learned from before, that shows that I get it enough to communicate it.
100%. There's this funny quote that I always go by for like simplicity and explaining it to people. I go, if you can't explain the concept to a drunk girl at the bar, you don't understand it, right? Because that's probably the hardest person that you can maybe explain it to.
I've got that meme in my head. You know, it's like he's shouting in the girl's ear and her face is like so unimpressed.
Yeah, it's like that.
They're just not getting it because don't understand it well enough.
You need to explain it properly.
It's paid dividends for me, and I'm not encouraging everyone to start a podcast, although I think it's a fantastic thing to do if you're interested in that space. But having conversations with your friends about ideas that you've consumed, maybe on a podcast, maybe in a YouTube video, maybe in a blog article or a Substack, and talking about it and sharing with your friends and explaining what you understand about it. Guess what? You'll probably understand it better yourself and be able to apply it to your life, because there's a really challenging part about what I was talking about in terms of content diet and what you consume. We can all consume and consume and consume. Like, I read 52 books last year. You know those guys that flex like that. But you're like, okay, what book did you learn the most from? Don't know. Yeah. Okay, well, you didn't really get any of this. Like, whereas I'll be like, oh, well, I read Trouble by Rob Henderson, and like, wow, I learned this about social class and this about social dynamics and this about the family structure, and I'm able to just go and go and go.
Yep.
But I've only read a small amount of it, but I've really learned it, so I can talk about it. And I would much rather that be me than the guy that like almost flatters himself by like the volume of consumption rather than the depth of it.
100%. It goes back to that Bruce Lee quote, right? Where it says, I don't trust the guy who could do 1,000 kicks once. It's the guy who's done one kick 1,000 times or something.
He's the one that's deadly. Yeah.
It's because it's the repetition and it's the volume, right? That's how you get good at it.
Yeah, brilliant. Number 11 rule.
Number 11, chase excellence, attract girls. Chase girls, attract mediocrity.
Okay, talk to me. You're a man that's worked on what he's wanted from dating and from relationships.
Yep.
What does that mean to you, that sentence?
So I think as a man, you always need to be your own mental point of origin. Like, you are the mission in the sense that you're the one taking this ship forward. And if you split in your focus by trying to get the hit and the dopamine of just chasing girls around and having fun and like forgetting yourself, you're always going to either lose a girl or never get the girl, because they're not attracted to the guy that's just running around like having fun. They want somebody that's going to be focused, that's going to be disciplined, that is like on their mission. And it's always so much more attractive when you see somebody just focused on themselves, doing the thing that they enjoy and just trying to improve. You don't need to try to chase, because once you're doing that at the right level, you attract all the things that you need.
Yeah, again, to hark back to something I learned from Jordan Peterson, a lot of the time I found myself definitely in my mid-20s bemoaning the quality of female that I had access to.
Yep.
And Jordan Peterson explained that, well, why don't you become the kind of man that would attract the kind of woman that you think you want?
Yep.
Not that you're worthy of, because you have to become that guy.
Yep.
You have to become the guy, don't you?
The guy, yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for that. So like, the kind of guy that I want to aspire to be, he would attract women that are of this value and are like this and have these values and look like this and have this career prospect or have these family values.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I should probably act like the guy that they would want to be with.
Yeah.
I need to have excellence in these domains, because that's the kind of guy from a hypergamy basis has access to those women.
100%. And you always get these guys, right? They'll be, watching TV or seeing a girl on there and be like, yeah, I like this kind of girl. I want her to look like this. She's got to be like this thin. He's
got his checklist.
She's got to have these big boobs. And it's kind of like, well, would she be choosing you? Like that's the thing. And there's this great quote from The Game by Neil Strauss, and everybody should read that book when they can. It says, you don't choose the girl. You just give the girl the opportunity to choose you.
That's how dating dynamics work. I completely agree with that.
And that's how it works. And it's about building that. And there's another great quote, right? And I want to try and recite it. I think it was by one of my friends called Fury. And it's kind of like, men are like gardeners. They build, beautiful gardens with flowers in, and flowers, attract girls and butterflies, right? So this is how men attract women, is men, the gardeners, building, these amazing, beautiful things and this beautiful life, you could say, as a metaphor, with these flowers that attract the butterflies. And that's how men attract women.
So you need to work on yourself.
Yep.
Work on what you're building, the garden in this example, and then that will attract the kind of
The
women that you want in your
butterflies
life.
or the women that you want in your life. Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for that, because as you say, in the second part of that sentence is so important. Chase girls, attract mediocrity. And you see guys that have so much potential, and I think this is partly a negative of the red pill movement on social
Yep.
media, where there is this like, guys can rack up whatever body count they want and chase as many women as they want, and it being like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
I actually disagree.
Yeah.
If you are somebody that's seeking validation from bedding many, many women across a week and across a month, you're missing the forest for the trees. And there's a lot more time that you could be allocating to other things that are more important. And as you've shown and we've spoken about offline, having one really good girl is so much more rewarding. And look at the business situation that you're in, because you're able to focus on that. And then when you have your time that's dating time and relationship time, it's of a really high quality and it's got a positive feedback loop.
100%. And I think that everything is about energy, and as a man, everything's energy, right? Like we admit energy, and the more things that are taking your energy, you know, if there's multiple girls or things that are going on and taking your energy, you're not going to be successful in your domain. So I think like being really cognizant and aware of, if I have the right person with me that's going to support me, that's not just like me going forward and them. It's like 1 + 1 = 3 in that sense, because you're a team together that's pushing towards something. Like there is that famous quote, right? Like, you do it alone, you go far, but I forgot the quote, but if you do it together, you're going to go way much further. And I think in your relationship, that's the most important thing, having someone that's going to be on your team and that's going to support in that regard. And I don't think that you're going to get that if you're just going out kind of chasing lustful women all the time. I think if you've got someone at home that, you have a great sex life with, that you enjoy that, but is also going to be there for you on the tough days and is going to support you through that, is so important. And you do the same for them. I think that's really where I see success. And some of the biggest and most successful entrepreneurs that I've worked with, and I know, they're women guys, happily married. A lesson in there.
Exactly. Success leaves clues, and some people dismiss that phrase, but I think when you expand it out across enough examples, you can really, really see it. Mm-hmm. And it's a question that comes up a lot in the podcast, and I've had guys on that have really built well when they've been single, and I've had guys that have built well because they've had a fantastic relationship dynamic, but I've met very few guys who have built and lived a very promiscuous existence for long periods.
For long periods, yeah. Because,
my goodness, it's a massive distraction.
Well, there's that clip of Dan Bilzerian, right? Has come out, and he said that he was doing like 3 to 7 girls a day. He's been doing for years, right? He's slept with thousands and thousands of women, and apparently he's come to this realization now that it's kind of like, I just want to get married and have one woman for a successful relationship.
It took him a while, but he got there.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of guys will say this, right? I just want one woman out of scarcity, right? Because maybe they not good at maybe balancing having or dating different girls or being able to attract them, but if someone like Dan Bilzerian is saying this after all of his extensive experience, it might be true,
Yeah. Well, I'll do this last one to take us home, and it's number 12.
Yep.
There's a better return on investment from removing bad habits and influences than always trying to add good ones. And that links exactly to what we're saying there. If you're always chasing women, that's probably a bad habit. Whereas if you've got someone that's stable and strong and really ticks that box for you, you've actually freed up more time to add in those good habits. And I always think, like, when somebody says, oh, the new thing to do is a cold dip in the morning, or it's a grounding, or it's a meditation, or it's an NSDR, I'm like, okay, cool. Yes, you can add that in, but how are you freeing up the time to do that? Are you going to get up an hour earlier because you're going to lose sleep? Yep. Are you going to cut out an hour of screen time? Are you going to cut out an hour of gossiping or an hour of Netflix? Something that you might want to remove and take away. And not all these things are bad things, but there has to be give and take in order to accommodate, because we don't have unlimited time in our day.
100%. And it goes back to like time and energy management when it comes to this. And the best one, I'm sure you've known this after, being and not drinking alcohol for a long period of time, it's the second and third order consequences of what you're doing from the bad habit. So if you go out on a Saturday night and you get wasted, okay, maybe you're only out for 4 or 5 hours if it's, a quiet night, but it's a Sunday when you're hungover and you're eating rubbish that you don't do any work. It's the Monday, right, where you're fuzzy at work and you clock off early. It's the Tuesday where you're not organized. You lose 3 days of the week. I don't know what that is as a percentage, but it's quite a big percentage of your week that you've now lost. If you remove that bad habit, don't worry about ice baths. Don't worry about all of this other stuff. Like, that is the highest return on investment that you're going to get.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of elective sobriety. There's many people that have to stop alcohol due to their relationship with the substance. But as someone that touch wood, has never had a really terrible relationship with it. When I choose to remove it, I'm unlocking so many other things: more time, more money, more calories, better sleep, and more mental bandwidth to just apply to other things. And when somebody's like, oh, how do you run a really successful podcast? How do you have a high-level sales career? And how do you have a good physique? And how do you have an active social life? Well, my active social life typically involves me driving and opting out of the fun when I want to, and not chasing the 3 a.m. buzz at all times, or end up in a house party till 7 a.m. doing things that I shouldn't do, because I cannot deal with the lost time thereafter. And I think as a young man, and this is something that we definitely spoke about Chris Williams when we both interviewed him back in the day, before he's maybe the behemoth that many people know now. He was always really big on young men should have an understanding of what that looks like and maybe have their fun in it. But it's really tragic when people get to like 23, 24 and they're still chasing the dragon. But then there's loads of people doing it in their 30s and you're like, wow, it's a psyop.
It is, yeah.
Like you've been tricked into thinking that this is the thing to do.
Yeah, and again, it's circling back to that self-awareness point. That self-awareness point just hasn't hit yet. That it's still in the 30s and they're doing the things that maybe they were doing in their late teens.
Did you find alcohol was the big one for you?
Yeah, so I've reduced alcohol down significantly since I've started trying to just improve. I think, when I look at the bad things that I do and like the arguments that I get into, the stupid money that I spend, the bad habits, the terrible food, the things that I should be doing that I don't do, are all down to the fact that I've consumed too much alcohol and done something stupid.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and that comes from a place of self-awareness. For me, it's been such a long time since it's been a regular thing. I mean, there's every chance that I'm in Dubai for 10 days and I've got a brunch this Saturday that I might choose to opt in for. Sure. But I haven't drank in the UK for like 5 years.
Of course.
And I just don't see what the return would be, because I've had those nights so many times when I was in my early 20s and even in my teens, because we start drinking really early in Scotland. And I just don't need it again.
100%. And I think that you've got that perfect balance where you don't need it. It's elective and you get so many productivity benefits from it. But also, if you wanted to go for a brunch, or let's say you're celebrating a huge milestone with the podcast or with your sales career or whatever it is, and you're sat on a balcony in Italy with your girlfriend and you decide to have a glass of wine, you can do that and enjoy and feel that heightened level of experience too, right? So I think that people can go completely sober if they want, but I do think there is that one, like, the hedonist in me likes that little, hit of alcohol at some time to celebrate it in a controlled way to just get a really good feeling.
Yeah, and you and I are going to go for a cigar after this, and I think that's a really good thing to tap into as well. And it's definitely not got the same hangover effects or challenges that alcohol does as well. Sure. And just finding different ways to mark milestones can be really helpful too, because society, I said it's a psyop, you are like heavily pushed towards it, particularly in British culture. Like, oh, it's your graduation, you have a drink. It's your birthday, you have a drink. It's a funeral, there's drinking at that as well. And you're like, oh, it's basically just for every occasion, but just finding what might be a celebration for you. It might be food, it might be something that's different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that hits home as well. But I really believe there's things that you can remove in order to make room for these other good things. And I'm glad you brought up booze, because I think it's the elephant in the room for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Oliver, so much fun, so much value. Really enjoyed this. Where should people head towards to continue the conversation?
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on. You can find me on Twitter mostly, so The Oliver Anwar, also on Instagram, The Oliver Anwar. And this year, we're also going to be doing a lot of stuff on YouTube as well. So if you just search me, Oliver Anwar, I don't think there's many other people in the world called Oliver Anwar.
Yes.
So you should be able to find me.
All three of those will be linked in the show notes below. Thank you to you, Oliver, and thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.